Now, in continuing with our book review videos, um, we should remember that there's different types of books for Himalayan art. Some books are textbooks um, designed to teach art and art theory, art history. Um, Other books are just background biographies for famous teachers that have a lot of painting and sculpture created of them in their likeness or portraits. Then we have a lot of actual auction house catalogs, um, dozens made every year by different auction houses. And then we also have exhibition catalogs. So today we're going to talk about an exhibition catalog that I do not think gets enough attention. Now, this one is called Tibet Tradition and Change, and it was an exhibition held in the Albuquerque Museum back in 1997. I think it went into January 98, but it was sort of late 1997 in Albuquerque. And this was primarily the text for this, and I think a lot of the objects were chosen by Pratap. So this is another of the great Pratap publications on art, and in this case, Tibetan art. There were contributions by Lobsang Lolungpa, Tupta Norbu, Robert Sachs, Robert Thurman, and Tashi Oser. And full disclosure here, I just would like to say that Lobsang Lolungpa was really my first Tibetan teacher, Tibetan language teacher back in the early 1970s, actually. So, but anyway, back to this publication. Why is it good? Why do I want to highlight it? It's because it has just a lot of art in it. They say there's, I think, 100 pieces or a little more than 100 cataloged items. But what they don't say is that for these cataloged items, sometimes there's 2 or 3 objects. So if there's related objects, such as one catalog entry is for the wealth deity Jambala, but they actually they have 3 photos. They have 3 actual images. They have a black, white, and a yellow Jambala, and they all look, of course, iconographically different. So there's actually more than 100 objects in this exhibition, and really 100 objects for any exhibition is generally regarded in museums as being like too many. 30 to 60 is a more realistic number to work with. Anyway, so this publication, it has a couple of sections in it. It has tradition, the art of Tibet, and this is primarily Pratap cataloging the objects, and it starts with the realm of human teachers, Buddha Shakyamuni, the 16 elders, Indian masters, mystics, which are generally regarded as the Siddha figures or Mahasiddhas. Then we have monks and adepts and leaders of traditions and founders of traditions. Then it moves into the divine and the mythic realm, which is really Buddhas, bodhisattvas, goddesses, deities, meditational deities, and mandalas. Then it goes into what they're calling the interactive realm. And the interactive realm is really ritual and ceremonial objects, which the humans use in these rituals, imagining the mandalas and the deities, etc. So that's the first part. That's the tradition, art of Tibet part. So remember the title, Tibet, Tradition and Change. Then the change part is actually an article by Robert Thurman, and it's the current political and human reality. And of course, that's the current and political human reality back in the mid-90s and early 90s. And a lot of that is similar, but moving forward 30 years, nearly 30 years. Then we have a section on Tibetan healing arts. And to be honest with you, I can't remember what that section is really about. It's really an article about Tibetan healing arts, but it's been so long since I've read it. Then we have a large section at the back on oral histories of Tibetan exiles. relocated to New Mexico. Now remember, Albuquerque is in New Mexico in the United States, and this was a show, an exhibition in Albuquerque, and there were a lot of Tibetans living there and living in the area at the time. So this book is really quite excellent. Now, a lot of the identifications for the iconography of deities is not always completely accurate, because the 90s was a transition time for Himalayan and Tibetan art. It was actually the beginning. If we look at the 90s, yes, Pratapal, and yes, before that we had Giuseppe Tucci, and we had Raghuvira and Lokesh Chandra. Yes, we had these people, but it wasn't really until the 90s with Circle of Bliss, the Circle of Bliss exhibition and the catalog, and then the traveling show that went to Asia, went to different places. That was really the beginning of a real, not a resurgence, but a real popularity of Himalayan Tibetan art, Tibetan Buddhism, Nepal, Ladakh, Bhutan. It was really Circle of Bliss was a real beginning, and so this Tibet tradition change was part of that. But even Circle of Bliss, you cannot rely on the iconography. You cannot rely on the names for the different painting traditions or sculpture traditions. A lot of that has changed because the knowledge just wasn't there back in the 90s. It wasn't really until really the beginning was really Shelley and Donald Rubin with the founding of the Rubin Museum of Art was really a kind of a real renaissance in the West for rediscovering accuracy when it comes to Tibetan Buddhist art and iconography and history. And so then we begin to see real accuracy appearing also in auction house catalogs, other catalogs, exhibitions, and that became very important. But back to Tibet, Tradition and Change, there is a lot of the art in this publication is still not yet on the Himalayan Art Resources website. We're in the process of trying to put more of the art up, but I'd say we might have maybe half of the objects, or maybe 50 of the objects. Very good, world-class objects, borrowed from museum and private collections throughout North America. And when I say throughout North America, I mean Canada and the US. So, a very interesting book, well worth looking at. I don't know, I really can't say how easy it is to come by in secondhand stores or that, but I think a good fine art library might have it, but it's definitely a worthwhile publication. So we'll leave it there. You can press like, you can subscribe, you can join HAR on Patreon. If you join HAR on Patreon, we have sometimes longer videos, we have more specialized information, and you can also request videos and request essays on different topics. And you can also make a donation on the homepage of Himalayan Art Resources.